In today's episode of the Platform Presents podcasts, I'm here with Katie Canton today. She's hailing over from the team at the GooseChase. She's the head of marketing, and GooseChase is all about interactive experiences that can be, in different types of contents and remote teams, use groups, you name it. A lot of different scenarios where those interactive experiences can be run. They're fun, engaging, and impactful digital experiences. Today, we want to really deep dive into what that actually means. Who's leveraging GooseChase and how the team around Katie is thinking about growth. So Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So maybe give us at the beginning like a quick 360 overview about GooseChase. What is it all about?
Yeah, sure. So GooseChase started out about 11 years ago as a tool to help people run scavenger hunts, which is kind of fun. And it was actually started at a university hackathon, which I think is extra fun. But since then, it's evolved into a platform, as you said, Lucas, that can be used in all sorts of ways to have fun, to engage people, whether that's teachers using it in the classroom to improve active learning, whether that's Fortune 500 companies using it to run their employee onboarding programs or their training programs. Or museums even using GooseChase for guest engagement or for self-guided tours. It's basically anyone that's got a group of people that they need to educate or engage. GooseChase helps them build and run experiences for those people. And it's pretty wild, all the different types of experiences that are now being run on GooseChase from something that started as like a scavenger hunt app at a university. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
Very cool. You mentioned very different types of use cases. Is there, certain organizations? Do I need a group of certain size to make it, useful? Maybe tell us sort of a couple of organizations or maybe characterizations that fit really well when they try to use GooseChase.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So really top level, anyone with a community or group of people that need to better engage or educate or entertain that group of people, then GooseChase is for you. To be more specific than that, though. So education, so K-12 education and higher ed are massive areas for us where people are seeing a lot of value. So teachers using us in classroom, student associations at campuses using us to run campus tours and that sort of thing. And that's kind of schools of all sizes, schools, districts, down to individual educators. Another big areas for us are NPOs. So we've got a lot of charity and not-for-profit organizations that use us to run fundraising, that use us to run their volunteer orientation, which is something that they need to do really frequently. And again, kind of all sizes there. With our enterprise customers, so we've got companies using us for employee onboarding, for virtual team events, for employee engagement. Typically, those tend to be larger enterprises, just because to be able to run like a really big, exciting onboarding program, you need a lot of new people being hired. So that's typically where we get into the higher end. But yeah, other than that, it's a little bit of GooseChase for everyone.
Very cool. Who is typically bringing on the product? Is that somebody who needs to run the community? Does it go from the team bottom up typically? Like what do you typically see? Who's bringing the product into the organizations?
Yeah, it's a good question. So typically in kind of what we term as kind of our enterprise demographic, usually we find that it's people that have been mandated to find a tool or a platform to do something differently or to try something new. So we're usually finding it's people that have been told to go find a new way of training or educating or engaging their employees, and then they stumble across us and bring them back up to HR managers and directors that are usually kind of the sign off there. And then with schools and that side of the market, it's usually coming from kind of bottom up. So it's educators that are using us and that are kind of bringing it then up to their school and their district to get access for everybody.
Very cool. Now, how do people hear about GooseChase? I mean, it's a group game, so that has an interesting dynamic to it. But what's sort of the first entry point that people have, or what are sort of the client acquisition channels you guys leverage?
Yeah, so in a very digital growth strategy answer, the biggest source of awareness and leads for us is actually participants in GooseChases that are being run. So we oftentimes will have, someone who's participated as part of a family or a free recreational game, or maybe a game in their community, and then they've reached out to us to talk about bringing GooseChase then to their organization. Mm-hmm. So from a product perspective, it's a nice little pat on the back that people love taking part in GooseChases so much that they want to run them with their own organization. To be perfectly honest, from a marketing perspective, it makes my job a whole lot easier because we've got this constant stream of people who have already used the platform that are reaching out to us with intent to purchase. So yeah. Very
cool. Very, very cool. Now with this dynamic that you were describing, how do you think about the website? What role does it play, if any, in the importance of their journey? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so one challenge for us, because we've come from a very narrow scavenger hunt app background, is that people, when they reach out to us, they're often thinking of GooseChase with one kind of particular event in mind or one really narrow use case in mind. So what the website is kind of tasked with doing in terms of some really heavy lifting is expanding everyone's understanding of the value that GooseChase can add, so that it is great for a team building event, but it's also great for your employee training programs. And it is great for, helping with in-class learning, but it's also great for PD day events for staff, or improving your field trip activities. So we've really tried to, in both the content we create on the blog and kind of the pages we've created on the site, is really, the name of the game is kind of inspiring people to think kind of beyond the one use case.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Now, on that regard, where do you see sort of a strengths of the website versus where do you see room for improvement at the moment? Because most marketers we have on the show, they're sort of in a constant way to reiterate messaging or the layout and stuff. Where do you see a strength versus where do you see room for further improvement?
Yeah, good question. So we actually relaunched the website last summer. So so we did a huge kind of revamp of it. So I think it looks amazing now, especially when you compare it to what it looked like a year ago. But so I think in terms of look and feel, it does a really good job of presenting GooseChase in the way that we want it to be presented. I think in terms of what could be better, I think on the main site, I think we're a little light on content. So we've got a few kind of use cases highlighted, but I think there's a lot more there. And then I think in terms of, driving people to, the website's very, very good at driving people to creating an account. Everyone can create a free GooseChase account. What we then struggle with is in turning those accounts into leads, into sales. So when we launched the new website last summer, our account creation numbers just skyrocketed. The percentage in which they increased, the new website is very, very good at making people interested and making them want to create an account and start using that free account. Where I would like to impact and see improvement is then turning accounts into opportunities, into sales.
Very cool. Super interesting. It gives us a great overview on how you're thinking about growth for the company, how you're thinking about the product. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk with you about your journey in marketing, because the first thing that I'm wondering is there's so much content out there for marketers to educate themselves on, to read and to digest, to refine their strategies. Where do you personally like to read and educate yourself with all the noise of marketing content out there?
Yeah, I used to, earlier on in my career, just try to read absolutely everything and attend every event and chat to everybody. And then I very quickly realized that takes a lot of time. So honestly, now I rely a lot on, well, pre-COVID, I was relying a lot on events. I found events and networking and just chatting to people, not even necessarily the sessions, but just chatting to other marketers at events was always, I always came back from those with just like 1,000 thoughts running in my head. So that, and then there's some like Slack kind of marketing groups that I like to be a part of, where you can really dive into some pretty interesting topics and chat to other people that are kind of facing the same challenges. So I find, for me personally, chatting directly with people is where I get most of my inspiration versus reading blogs.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Since we slowly come to the end of the interview, I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for those?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Very good. What is maybe the last book or the last podcast that you read or listened to?
Does it have to be marketing related or just anything?
Whatever.
Okay, cool. The last book, so I just came back from a very long road trip, so I listened to a lot of audiobooks. And the last book I listened to was called Empire of Pain, and it was a very, very long book about the opioid crisis in America. So it's a very good read, if not wholly depressing, but there's a marketing element in it, which I found so interesting because this family essentially invented pharmaceutical marketing. And then so the book kind of delves into that and the impact of that. So from a marketer, I found that aspect of the story just like incredibly interesting.
Interesting. What is one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Yeah, so one single thing. So our big thing right now is content. So again, to help kind of enlighten people and inspire them and to think about how GooseChase can be used in all these different ways, we really need to show people. So sharing customer stories of how different customers have really gotten creative with the platform, sharing ideas on how you can use GooseChase, and then sharing that in all sorts of different formats. So we're really doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on content.
Very good. If there would be no boundaries in tech, what would be the one thing that you would fix for your role today?
There's no boundaries in tech. What would be the one thing? Tech, what would be the one thing I would fix for my role? I don't know a very specific or eloquent answer, but something around data. I mean, my issue is always got access to a lot of data now, which is amazing. And that's something I had at the beginning of my career, but now I struggle with the avalanche of data. How do I find the insight? So it's, if I could log into my computer every day and there was just a number that popped up that said, this is the number that you need to know and you need to like create some action around, that would be amazing.
Very good. Last question. If we would do a little bit of time travel, right? And we go back to the days of the University of Guelph. So what would be one advice that would you give yourself for your journey in, marketing and growth?
Okay. I would say advice as a marketer, I think, is to, for me personally, would be to ask a lot of questions, ask as many questions as possible. I think a lot of people, especially at the beginning of their career, are always worried about looking like they don't know what they're doing or looking dumb or looking inexperienced, and I definitely felt that way. But the only way you learn is by asking questions. And the also advantage at the beginning of your career is nobody expects you to know anything. So that's like, you've got the permission to ask as many questions and as many times as you want. So be curious and ask questions would be my advice to my former self.
Very cool. Katie, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be guest on Platform Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all about GooseChase that we discussed today, what's the one thing they should remember? It's fun. I mean, GooseChase, from both like creating a GooseChase to participating in a GooseChase and then working at GooseChase, it's a lot of fun. It's fun to get people engaged. It's fun to get people excited. It's fun to, build marketing communications with like adorable little goose animations on it. So yeah, GooseChase is a lot of fun. Very cool. Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents. Cool. Thanks, Lucas.